Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My fiance let my snake loose outside, so I kicked her out. After that, update my emergency contact info. I don't even work there anymore. And after that, am I the jerk for serving my brother-in-law's dinner using toy utensils? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to lose someone else's pet. Oh, I'll find a way, Reddit boy. I always do. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My fiance let my snake loose outside, so I kicked her out. I, 27 male, have always been an animal lover. I love snakes, tarantulas, scorpions, lizards, geckos, dogs, and cats. When I moved out of my parents' house and into my townhome, I decided to adopt a ball python. She is very docile and loves to be held. I set her tank up in one of the rooms downstairs. When my fiance, 28 female, and I decided that we were ready to move in together, I slowly introduced her to the snake. She thought the snake was really cool and even held her a few times. A few months ago, her friends came over, and ever since, she's been asking me to find a new home for the snake. I had to travel to another state for work and trusted her to take care of the snake. I was gone for a week, and when I came back, I saw the tank completely gone. I searched all over the house, and it was nowhere to be found. I went outside and checked the wooded area behind the townhome and found the tank. The tank was open and no sign of the snake. When my fiance got home, I showed her the tank and told her to go pack a suitcase and to find another place to stay. Her defense was that I was giving the snake too much attention. Fiance is currently staying with her parents, and they think that I'm overreacting over an animal. Fiance is upset that I won't talk to her or accept her apology. Am I the jerk for kicking my fiance out of the house for letting my snake loose outside? It's illegal to turn animals loose like that in the wild. Not the jerk. Your fiance is messed up. Agreed. The snake very well might not live due to the fact that it's used to being a pet and not used to being outside. This would be like letting a dog run free. OP should break off the engagement. I almost always consider this sub's recommendations to end marriages, break off engagements, go no contact, etc. to be heavy-handed. But this one is messed up on so many levels. The casual animal mistreatment, the fact that she did this to something she knew you love, the jealousy towards a pet, the secret betrayal, and not to mention her family backing her up that all of this is no big deal. OP, your life will be horrible if you marry this messed up person and her messed up family. Not the jerk. I think a lot of the breakup recommendations are good, to be honest. My perspective is, if it comes to the point where they are asking anonymous strangers for their opinions about relationships, then there's probably a lot more issues going on too, meaning the relationship probably won't last. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you stay with your fiance or break up with them? Please let us know. If Reddit boy ever let one of my pets go, he'd need a new head. Update my emergency contact info? I don't even work there anymore. This is an interaction I just remembered and figured it might fit here. Years ago, I worked as the administrator for a pair of residential treatment facilities where individuals with long-term mental health issues lived. I was the contact person for a couple city and county agencies and would occasionally get calls about referrals, changes in parole status, and some of my residents, that kind of thing. I left that position in the fall/winter of 2012. Back in 2020 or so, I got a call from one of the partners, and the conversation went like this. Me. Hello? Caller. Hello, this is whoever. Let's call him B. With such and such agency. Is this OP? Me. Please tell me what this is regarding. Caller. I'm calling to update and verify our emergency contact information. We have you listed as the contact person for this facility. Is that right? Me. That's my name. But I haven't worked for that company since 2012. I am not an emergency contact for them anymore, and you will need to remove me from your list. I am not a resource for you or for them. Note, yes, I really did talk like that. 10 years in community mental health/outreach trains you to speak like a computer when necessary so your conversations stay factual and you don't inadvertently agree to anything. Caller. Well, we need some sort of contact information, and yours is the most up-to-date we have. Please spell your first and last name and your email or mailing address so our contact information is correct. And me. Stop right there. I'm not verifying any of my contact information, as I'm not an employee of the company and cannot be used as a resource. Remove any of my information from your list and call the company directly if you need updated emergency contact information. I don't even know who works at those sites any longer. I've been gone for years. Caller: I need you to help me update your contact information. You're being deliberately unhelpful. Me: yes. Now imagine how unhelpful I'd be if you called me at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. Me continuing: again, please remove me from your list of contacts altogether. I no longer work for the company and will not be handling any emergency calls. If you continue to harass me, I'll make my own call to the company and report you for harassment. Caller: man, I'm just trying to do my job. Me: yeah, well, you're also trying to get me to do something that is definitely not my job. Please do not call me for emergencies. Goodbye. I ended the call. And that was that. I know it reads like a script or a fake story, but yeah, a decade in community mental health/social work teaches you to talk like an automation sometimes, so you don't inadvertently reveal someone's protected information, and it does help one maintain a really weird level of professionalism and boundaries to keep you from overpromising something to someone. Am I the jerk for serving my brother-in-law's dinner using toy utensils? I, male 17, moved in with my sister after my parents kicked me out. Another story. They said I'll have to temporarily stay here until I get back to normal, which I don't think I will. But anyways, so I moved in with my sister and her husband about a month ago. FYI, she does everything around the house. I started helping here and there, as well as looking after a 2-year-old niece, and now she's 6 months pregnant. Brother-in-law does nothing because he's the breadwinner, as he claims, but in my opinion, he's taken it a bit too far. Example: he'd tell her to start his laundry once he takes it off, put dinner on the table once he's home, get the shower ready, and so on. They fight a lot because my sister is exhausted and burnt out. I usually put my headphones on and mind my own business, but 2 nights ago there was a lot of commotion once he came home, so I went to see what the issue was. Turns out, brother-in-law was complaining about dinner and my sister was too exhausted to get up. I mean, the dinner was already cooked, but he wanted her to put it on a plate for him on the table. I told my sister I'd do it, but instead of using their kitchen utensils, I used my niece's toy utensils, like a toy cup, toy plate, toy fork, and a tiny napkin. And I put the food on the toy plate and the drink in the cup while brother-in-law was in the shower. He then came into the kitchen and sat down and stared at the plate for a few seconds. He then looked at me and asked what the heck this was and whether I was joking. I told him if he wanted to act like a helpless child, then he might as well get treated like one. He began yelling and my sister came inside. He then threw the napkin and stormed off upon saying that I disrespected him and that he'll let my parents know about what I did. My sister saw what I had done and started laughing. I went into my room, but the argument didn't stop. Now he's expecting an apology from me for meddling in his marriage and pulling this crappy stunt on him. I could be the jerk for this, but I was just so mad for my sister and also sick and tired of being sick and tired of the nightly fighting over dinner. Okay, so this is really funny, and he totally had it coming, but we all know you should have stayed way out of this. I get that you were trying to stick up for your sister. Who deserves that? Please accept my softest "everyone sucks" here. You might have actually made them fight more. People like your brother-in-law often take these things out on people like your sister. Yeah, I mean, I agree that while it was definitely well-deserved, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to do. For OP, since he needs to make sure he still has a place to live, and for the sister for the reasons you said. Although from the post, it does sound like the sister also found it funny and wasn't mad at him for doing that. Who knows, maybe sister is also reconsidering staying married to this jerk. So yeah, agreed with the very, very soft "everyone sucks" here. Not the jerk, but honestly, OP, in this situation, it might be better to keep your head low and stop antagonizing him. It sounds like you're surrounded by a really bad situation, but antagonizing this monster is going to affect your sister more than it affects you. You're a guest in their home. If she needs help, you help her. Ignore him at best. You don't have to be a peacekeeper, but don't do the opposite. Everyone sucks here. But what you did was hilarious, and he had it coming. Not the jerk. Also, yikes. Your brother-in-law needs massive help. He sounds like a jerk. Support your sister in this time. Make sure she knows that you're there for her. She needs a divorce ASAP. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is his brother-in-law? Please let us know. Next time, don't forget to bring him a bottle of milk. Neighbors involve law enforcement only to be told their own actions count as harassment. My husband, male 43, and I, female 30, recently moved into a house that was previously owned by his parents. The neighbors, who we'll call couple JK, on one side were friends with his folks. Small description of the layout. Our garage door points to the side, so it points towards JK's house. It happens that their bedroom window is facing the garage door. Above our garage door is a small light that illuminates our driveway. Both my property and my neighbors are on a full acre in the country, outside city limits. They have complained about that light since his parents owned the place. They have complained about quite a few things since we've moved in, and for the first bit, we tried to be considerate. The motion light was a big one that they would constantly bring up, saying it was shining in their bedroom window. We had a large pine tree that blocked it for a while on our side of the property line. JK came to us asking to cut down the tree because the overhanging branches were making it difficult to pull vehicles through on their property. In an attempt to be good neighbors, we agreed. So they cut the tree down. But in doing so, they left the trunk, saying it was on us to deal with it. But because the tree was cut down, now they're complaining more about the light. We have not allowed that to make us change it. So they've decided to put up a privacy fence. Okay, sure. It means we have less to deal with from them. This winter, there have been a number of reports of people stealing things from cars. And on top of that, we have chickens. So we set up a Ring camera and motion light that faces the back of the property. The light only comes on when someone is in the driveway or near the chicken coop. But by pointing it at the back of the house, their window is also in that path of the light. It's just in the fringe view of the camera, so I can't imagine that much light is getting in. And with the angle, it's also on our bedroom window, almost directly. It hasn't troubled us at all since we installed it. It had been there for 3 days when we got a text from JK saying challenge accepted and threatening to get the brightest light they can find and point it at our window. A hollow threat. There's no way they could. Now it's been a little over a month. The neighbor was true to his word and put a light on a 12-foot pole with a light on top. I took pictures. It's right up against the fence he built, pointing directly onto our property. He did his best to angle it into our window, but missed. Not that we told him that. It didn't really trouble us. He took it down about 4 days later, never saying a word. Then they called the sheriffs on us. After sending progressively more aggressive and insulting text messages, always from the husband, Jay, they resort to calling law enforcement. The officers showed up, very polite, and we talked with them. Showing them the light in question, they agreed that its placement was fine. We mentioned the text messages, and the officers asked to see them. My husband showed them his phone, and the officers' entire demeanor changed. They apologized for interrupting dinner and said that they would go next door and talk to the neighbors. We got a text the next day from the wife, Kay. It was finally what we wanted. According to her, she knew nothing about her husband's behavior. She had been out of town when he had put up the spite light and made him take it down when she got home. She didn't know about the text messages he had been sending. The sheriffs told them both that my husband and I have enough to make a real harassment case against them. She would like a chance to talk face to face. She spoke with my husband today, and it genuinely seems sorted. Who would have thought them calling the police would actually help us? My neighbor has a giant floodlight shining directly in my bedroom window, so I put up dark plastic, cardboard, and curtains. Now you see, petty little me would have got some sort of mirror film and put it on my window, so whatever they shine at me is reflected right back at them. Am I the jerk for kicking my sister out from every streaming platform I own because she kicked my dad off of her Netflix? English is not my first language. This is not in the US. The streaming devices' prices are really up here. I'll try to keep it short. I'm 25, male. My mom passed about 4 years ago, and one of the things my dad, 65, male, clinged on to ever since was movies. They really enjoyed doing this together, so I guess he took comfort on keeping the activity on his own. At that time, my sister, 32, got a 2-screen Netflix subscription and gave one to my dad so he could use it whenever he wanted. During those 4 years, I was able to get pretty much all of the rest, and since my sister was paying for my dad's Netflix, I thought I gave one of the screens to use, so no biggie. I've been out of town ever since New Year's Eve, and I finally came back home a week ago. I told my dad that we should see a movie together on Netflix or something, but he said that Netflix wasn't working. I found it odd, so I asked what he meant while taking his phone. He said that he asked my sister a few months ago, but she said that it wasn't working, so they'd wait for it to work. I only hummed and tried to log in again, but it didn't let me, so I called my sister asking for the password. She said she couldn't share the account anymore because now that they had my nephew, too male, they were using one of the screens for him and another one for her husband. This enraged me. I asked her why she didn't tell me before and why she lied to my dad. She said she didn't have the heart to tell him, and I told her, "But you have the heart to lie to him, don't you?" and hung up. Since then, I've gotten my dad a new Netflix account, and I've changed all my passwords so only my dad and I have them. 2 days ago, she called saying that my brother-in-law wanted to watch Game of Thrones, but the account kicked him out, and I told her, yeah, it was me. She flipped and asked for the password because they can't afford it on their own, and I said, well, I didn't have the heart to tell you, and I hang up the phone again. My brother-in-law texted me calling me petty and a jerk. My dad's oblivious to all of this. My sister called again and asked for the password of one of the platforms because my nephew wants to see Encanto, and I said she has to apologize to my dad first, at least, and she said my nephew's discomfort is on me. Encanto? Bruh, why do you pronounce things so weird sometimes? To get more comments on the video. Oh, it all makes sense now. Am I the jerk for telling my husband to stop disrespecting our surrogate? Me, female 34. My husband, Hunter, male 37, suffered from fertility issues. We recently decided to get a surrogate who's a friend of a friend. We were busy getting everything done legally. We already had a contract in place. My egg was used, so no worries in this regard. Plus, our surrogate is a respectful, kind woman who's been keeping her part of the contract intact. But it's Hunter who's starting to act strange. I've noticed that he's been focusing all of his attention on our surrogate, like skipping work to visit her or get her things she didn't ask for, chat with her all the time on social media, and also constantly offering to do things for her, like drive her places, and sometimes even invite her out or offer to repair stuff for her. She complained to me about this and even told me about things he's been doing that I didn't even know about, like bringing her gifts. I tried speaking to him about what this looks like, but he said that he's doing what he's doing for our son and not for her. Still, I asked that he tone it down and respect her space. He got mad at me and accused me of being jealous of the woman who's carrying his own child and said that this makes me look bad. I said our surrogate was the one who complained about his behavior, and he said that this wasn't true. Apparently, this made him somewhat angry, so I gave him time to cool down a bit. Yesterday, our surrogate called me saying that Hunter came over and told her guests to leave. I asked why, and she said that he wanted to show her the $9,000 car he bought for her. I was shocked. She said she declined the car and asked him to leave, but he started arguing with her about using public transportation and risking our baby's well-being. I was fuming. I called him demanding he get home, and he did eventually. Once he got back, I picked up a fight with him and yelled at him, saying that he's been nothing but overstepping, disrespectful, and inappropriate towards our surrogate. Again, he explained the car wasn't for her, but to ensure that the baby is safe. I told him to stop disrespecting her and stop using the baby as an excuse to stomp all over her boundaries. He ranted about how he was just trying to make this work and that I should do the same, if not more. He even accused me of not loving our son as much as he does, but this isn't the way, and putting $9,000 for a car without telling me? He left the house for a while, then came back and refused to speak to me. I might have been hard on him, but he might have been oblivious, so I'm less sure seeing his reaction now. Not the jerk. Reading that creeped me out on a deep level. He sounds like a stalker that's obsessed. Does he not realize that stressing her out by being intense and domineering could cause harm? He needs help and possibly a restraining order. Agreed. It gave me the creeps. A 37-year-old that can't understand how he isn't respecting another person's boundaries is a red flag. Not the jerk. He's actually endangering the successful arrival of your son because not only is he causing stress to your surrogate, he's also making her so uncomfortable that she might seek legal recourse to break the contract. Maybe schedule a formal meeting with lawyers and your surrogate so she can express her needs officially. That might be a way for your husband to actually see the severity of his behavior. Not the jerk. Have him seek therapy before the baby is born. OP. We did get counseling, but for other issues, mainly in our marriage. It clearly wasn't enough. He needs more, and you'll probably want to be with him so he doesn't lie about what's happening or lie about going to begin with. He's clearly untrustworthy when it comes to the situation at hand. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. He should have given that $9,000 to me. My malicious compliance turned my office into a vacation home. This was maybe 6 to 7 years ago. I was the only full-time IT person at a $100+ million per year in sales company. I worked 55 to 65 hours a week between on-site and at home. This is important to remember. I reported to the controller and everything was fine until he quit and they hired the new guy. The new guy was the youngest controller ever hired by our site or any of our sister sites, and man, did he think he had something to prove. First thing he does is pull me into his office and inform me that my team will be the first ones in the building and the last ones to go home. I expect to see you in your office anytime I am in this building. I don't care what you do. Just make sure you are here 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. I tried to argue why that was a bad idea. He was having none of it. My response as they collapsed, okay, as if I tried to make it a single syllable. Anyone that worked with me knew they were now done for. I was literally the only guy with the keys to the castle, literally untouchable. Malicious compliance. Met with the OSHA lead to see what appliances I could run in my office safely. No electric kettle. Met with HR and informed them I would be making a spreadsheet of my daily work activities just in case I needed to prove my productivity for any reason in the near future. They thought it was a joke and said okay. Then I set up my second home. Over the course of the next few months, every day I showed up to work at 7:15, went to my office, and worked until 3:30. Then I would start my vacation. I brought in a Raspberry Pi and played games, brought in crock pots of food, and invited key members in to graze and chat. One day I set up a panini press bar and invited all the engineers in for sandwiches, watched movies, listened to music and ebooks, tried to get a dartboard approved by the safety lead, said no before I could finish my request. Basically, I did all the things I did at home at the office. People would stop in after 3:30 p.m. and ask for help, and I would tell them no, explain what I was told, and tell them to stop in at 7:30 tomorrow, which was a moot point because the site was an 8:30 to 4:30 place, and if possible, immediately go back to slacking off while they were standing there asking for help. This lasted about 2 months. Then HR called me and we had that meeting. I explained everything, showed my spreadsheet of work, and I included all the times I spent doing zero work and what I was doing to slack off in that time. I was averaging around 35 hours of work a week. Between breaks and lunches, that's normal. They were mad at me and even more mad at the controller because they knew my productivity tanked, and as a byproduct, so did multiple departments. I was told to go back to doing what I was doing before he started, and I would start reporting to one of the departments that needed me the most instead of finance. Everyone in the office pieced together that their life got harder for those few months because the new guy deemed it so. He ended up relocating shortly after because no one wanted to work with him. I ended up working more normal work weeks, around 45 hours, and everyone was just happy to have me back to help when they needed it. Demand we work overtime for free? Enjoy having no employees. I was reminded of this story due to the recent passing of the hero of this story. Grumpy, you will be missed. I met Grumpy in an addiction recovery program. He volunteered there after they helped him and he became my sponsor. Seeing that I was trying to get my life together, he offered me my first job out of high school. Grumpy was the manager of a store for a company that sold everything you needed to build a house, from cement and bricks to custom-made cupboards. I started as a loader, filling the trucks that were making deliveries. A little background for the company. It plays an important role later. When they started, back in the early 80s, they sold everything you needed to build a brick-and-mortar home wholesale to professionals. During their first expansion, they got a really good reputation for their prices of power tools, custom cupboards, and landscaping, including custom-made garden furniture. The stores were basically big warehouses. In the mid-90s, they opened their doors to the general public, which, accompanied by a rising tint of do-it-yourself, skyrocketed their sales. They brought a second, smaller wave of expansion and the opening of the online store, first only with phone orders and later on with a proper site. When I joined, they were doing a third shift on their business plan. They had cut down on things that weren't big sellers, like bricks and concrete, and were focusing more on the big sellers, custom-made furniture, landscaping, tools, and for some weird reason, plumbing. My first 8 months on the job was a dream. Grumpy was an excellent manager. Having started in the company roughly the same age I was and being promoted through the ranks, had developed a very distinct managerial style. His concept was simple. If my employees are happy, they work better and provide better services, which leads to better sales. That meant that while Grumpy managed one of the inner city stores, meaning medium to small size compared to others, we were fourth in revenue nationwide and first in customer happiness. And then the reason for his nickname stroke. While everyone called him Grumpy, a nickname he was kind of proud of, he was far from it. The reason was he had a medical condition that affected his nerves and had him left with a permanent frown on his face. He had declined promotion due to that condition, knowing the extra stress would make his condition flare up, meaning he wouldn't be as effective as he would like. His medical condition flared up unexpectedly, and Grumpy had to be hospitalized and be on sick leave for a time. HQ decided to not have one of Grumpy's assistants be an acting manager for the duration, but bring in a regional manager to take over the store for the duration. Let's call him Wilhelm. Wilhelm was the exact opposite of Grumpy. He was younger than Grumpy. He was in his late 20s. Grumpy was in his late 30s. He had a business degree and he hadn't worked the floor at all. He was hired from the beginning as an office drone and climbed his way to regional manager. The reason he was put in charge of our store had to do with the change of the business plan of the company. You see, the change of focus had created a lot of empty spaces in the stores. A supermarket chain had approached the company with an offer to rent the empty space, especially for inner city stores. The company had accepted and placed regional managers in key stores to help with integration. The thing is, the supermarket chain had a reputation of being bad employers. That was reinforced by one of our tellers, who had worked for them for 3 years before quitting to join us. Wilhelm didn't help also. His managerial style was based on only one concept: make more money in any way possible. He started by changing our schedule from monthly to weekly, raising the sales targets to unrealistic heights, and always demanded more. In the first 2 weeks, 6 experienced people had left, 4 quit, and 2 were fired, and replaced by young, inexperienced people that were easier to manipulate. And then the integration happened. The floor was the first to feel the problem. The supermarket opened its doors and was understaffed. Wilhelm started sending people over to help for 4 to 6 hours, while also demanding to work their regular shifts. If someone declined, he or she was written up. 2 write-ups in 6 months and you were fired. Then Wilhelm came to lay the law in the loading bay. The loading bay was shared between the 2 stores. Wilhelm declared that we had to first help the 2 guys of the supermarket unload their trucks because their products were perishable, and then start loading our own trucks. That would throw our delivery schedule to the wind. The loading crew worked from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. We loaded first the trucks that had longer to travel, so they will be ready to leave at 7 at the latest. The company had a next-day delivery policy for a 150-mile radius. What Wilhelm declared meant we couldn't start loading our trucks before 7:30, and they couldn't start their route before 9:30. We said as much, but Wilhelm didn't care. He said we had to do both jobs. When someone inquired about overtime, Wilhelm said no. He said we already made too much money with unsocial hours, 5 to 8, and leaving early, so he wouldn't approve overtime. So, from a nice environment that you wanted to work for, we all started getting miserable. We lost 10 people in the loading crew in a month because of the new rules. The new hires didn't last long. The floor was a mess also, started turning personnel fast. Anyone who is staying is either looking for another job, is afraid of unemployment, or is too young to know better. The sales had a very small decline, but customer happiness is plummeting fast. After almost 6 months, all the old guard that was left was ready to quit. But our savior came back. Almost 6 months from the day he was hospitalized, Grumpy walks into the store to claim his rightful position. He isn't a knight in shining armor, riding a pure white horse, carrying a legendary sword. He's in normal attire, slightly limping and holding a cane. We have a welcome back party and have a small glimmer of hope now that he's back. We are informed that Grumpy will be on light duty for 2 weeks before he becomes the manager again. Despite Grumpy being back, Wilhelm still remains the regional manager, which means he outranks Grumpy and will make it very clear in private meetings with all of us. If he caught us complaining to Grumpy, we were as good as gone. Still, a few of us are planning to have a meeting with Grumpy after the weeks, letting him get his sea legs back. But another department had other ideas. During his reign of terror, the only department that Wilhelm couldn't control was the workshop. He knew that if he treated them as bad as he did to us, they would quit, and the sales would go from a small decline to bottom of the barrel real quick. As I said, custom-made furniture was the #1 seller. So the head carpenter has a meeting with Grumpy on his second day talking about the future of the workshop. In reality, the guy spilled the beans on Wilhelm. With the pretext of catching up with the changes, Grumpy has meetings with everyone, learning what Wilhelm has done and why we had so many new staff. You could feel he was getting angrier with every meeting. He had also had an eye-opening meeting with the manager of the supermarket. Finally, the time had come that he is the manager again. The revenge. On his first day back as manager, Grumpy notifies everyone of a mandatory meeting after the store is closed. He has a solution. So gather in the store after closing hours, and Grumpy lays out the plan. For the next couple of days, nobody except him is coming to the store. If anyone calls us, we should direct them to him, which we did. When we started getting calls about the store being closed, Grumpy's answer to the headquarters was simple. The staff was working on a second job during their shifts, which is a breach of contract, so I had to fire them all and find new staff. That caught headquarters' attention, because nothing of that sort was reported in the last 6 months. They asked Grumpy for evidence, which he happily provided with our written testimonies, which brought a crapstorm on Wilhelm. You see, Wilhelm had an arrangement with the supermarket manager. He got a kickback from our unpaid labor for the supermarket, and the manager offered the same thing to Grumpy. He also included that Wilhelm regularly declined to sign overtime, which meant that if any one of us went to the labor department, the company would get a really huge fine. The aftermath. Wilhelm quickly got fired. We all received calls to interview with the company for an open position. We all received severance pay for our firing, plus most of the unpaid overtime, about 80% of it. Almost all of us went back to work with a small pay raise based on experience. The company took a long, hard look at the supermarket chain and distanced themselves from them. They stayed until their lease was over, but no shared employees anymore, and a lot of theirs jumped ship to our side. Next time Grumpy had to take time off, one of his assistants took over. 2 did a stellar job, leading to being promoted to managers in other stores. Grumpy brought back his usual managerial style, leading again to a rise of sales and customer happiness. I left the job 3 years later for a better paying position, but I still remember Grumpy as one of the best managers I ever had.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.